Allow me to introduce myself. I am Anna. I am in my 42nd year of life. I have been united in marriage for 15 years. We have a son, 13, intelligent, reserved, already retreating into his own little universe more often than he spends time with me. To the casual observer, my life appears to be what many would deem good. A harmonious union. A lovely abode. A family that appears whole. Yet, if you were to inquire about the emotions that dwell within me, I would describe myself as unseen. Peter, my husband, is a truly good man. Compassionate. Unwavering. Dependable. He puts in a great deal of effort. He delivers. He has a deep affection for our son. Yet, at some point in our journey, the affection we once cherished subtly transformed into a series of habitual exchanges. We do not engage in conflict. We hardly ever engage in disputes. We merely are. Alongside one another. Like two individuals cohabiting under the same roof, yet drifting apart in every other aspect. Each day unfolds with a sense of monotony. Awaken. Prepare the morning meal. Head to the office. Return to the place where you belong. Evening meal. Television. Rest. Reiterate. There is a serene tranquility that envelopes the surroundings. Unsurprising. And yet, it seems as though I'm gradually disappearing within it. In the stillness of the night, I often find myself lying in bed beside Peter, gazing up at the ceiling. He drifts into slumber effortlessly, his breath slow and steady. I pivot my gaze toward him, searching my memory for the last moment he truly saw me. Not in the role of his child's mother. Not in the role of the one who maintains the household's rhythm. Yet as I am, Anna. It eludes my memory. Loneliness often feels most profound in moments when you are surrounded by others. When someone stands beside you, yet you still feel invisible. That was my state, silently suffering within a seemingly perfect existence, when he returned. Mark. 10 years had passed since our paths last crossed. It has been a decade since we vowed to part ways forever. Not due to a lack of concern. Yet it was our deep concern that led us here. Mark used to be my colleague. We toiled side by side in the same office, endured countless meetings together, and savored tranquil lunches that seamlessly transitioned into leisurely strolls after the day's end. We convinced ourselves it was merely friendship. Yet it was not. It evolved into something greater. Excessively abundant. It endured for a year. A year filled with cherished instances, where the sensation of being truly noticed returned once more. A year that awakened a sense of vitality within me, unlike anything I had experienced in quite some time. Yet it was misguided. It was an unspoken truth between us. And then one fateful day we brought it all to a close. Keep it simple. No major conflict. A decision marked by silence and tinged with pain. We vowed that our paths would never cross again. In the interest of preserving my union. To preserve his sanity. In the interest of preserving what remained of our existence. I honored that vow. For a decade, I did not make a call. I did not send a text. I never allowed myself to contemplate his whereabouts. I interred it. I laid him to rest. Up until that evening. On that particular Tuesday, Peter found himself embarking on yet another business trip. Our son lay peacefully asleep upstairs. The house was silent in a manner that felt burdensome, rather than serene. With a glass of wine in hand, I settled onto the couch, aimlessly scrolling through my phone. And then it unfolded. A message has arrived. A note. From a name I never expected to encounter once more. Mark. In that fleeting instant, the air seemed to vanish from my lungs. I gazed at the screen, my heart racing in my chest as if it were desperate to break free. It was merely a single line. Utterly straightforward. Utterly perilous. Anna, are you awake? Initially, I felt compelled to erase it. To act as though it never crossed my path. To safeguard the serene existence I had carefully crafted. Yet my hands remained still. In that single line, a decade of silence shattered. I chose not to respond. Not immediately. I set the phone aside. I firmly declared to myself, no. I reminded myself of the promise you made. I reminded myself not to go down this path. Yet, in that moment, I took it up once more. And I began to type. Indeed. The response arrived with remarkable speed. I'm aware that this isn't the right course of action. I simply couldn't shake thoughts of you from my mind this evening. My breath hitched. His voice seemed to echo within those words. The very voice that once called to me softly in the shadows. The very voice that illuminated my existence, making me feel seen. I responded, Mark, a decade has passed. I understand, he penned. Yet, does it truly seem like a decade to you? I gazed at that question, lost in thought for what felt like an eternity. And the reality was negative. It did not. We engaged in conversation for an hour that night. It's not focused on what has already transpired, simply regarding existence. His journey to a new city unfolded with a blend of excitement and uncertainty. His life unfolded without the bonds of marriage. How work occupied his time yet failed to fill the silence. I shared with him the story of my son, concerning the residence, reflecting on the life I envisioned filled with joy. At a certain moment he inquired, Is happiness yours, Anna? There was a moment of uncertainty. Next I began to type, I'm all right. He responded, Being fine does not equate to being happy. A lump formed in my throat. Just before we concluded our discussion, he dispatched one final message. I will be in town next week. Would it be possible for us to meet? Simply to converse. Only this once. I gazed at that message until the screen faded into darkness. My thoughts shouted in defiance. Yet my heart softly murmured its agreement. I chose to remain silent that night. Yet, come the next morning I found myself doing just that. All right. Only this once. As I pressed send, a tremor coursed through my hands. For I was aware. I understood that the phrase just once was never truly meant to be taken at face value. Throughout that entire week it consumed my thoughts. Concerning him. Reflecting on how, after a decade, a single message has the power to revive memories as if time had stood still. As the day of our meeting arrived, I found myself before my closet, gazing at the array of clothes before me. It was an odd sensation once more being concerned about my attire. I opted for a classic white blouse paired with jeans. Laid back. Nothing that would reveal too much. Yet, I still apply the fragrance he once claimed to adore. As I stepped outside, I reassured myself that it was merely a cup of coffee. Merely un dialogue. Only resolution. Yet, beneath the surface I was aware all along. This would be anything but closure. On a Thursday afternoon, the world seemed to pause, caught in a moment of quiet anticipation. An afternoon steeped in an unsettling stillness. The sky hung in a gentle hue, a soft pallor that enveloped the world, while the air held a peculiar quietude, a prelude to the impending rain. I made my way to the quaint cafe he had selected. It was nearby, a serene little spot I had walked past countless times, yet had never truly observed. My fingers clenched the steering wheel with an intensity that felt almost primal. As I made my way there, a voice within me continued to murmur, This is not something you should be engaging in. I made my entrance ahead of schedule. Indeed I did. In moments of anxiety, I find myself consistently arriving ahead of schedule. I lingered in my car for a moment, gazing at the cafe entrance, convincing myself that I could still turn back. Perhaps I should simply head home. Act as if his message never reached me. Let us act as though this moment never occurred. Yet I remained. I emerged from the vehicle. As I stepped into the cafe, a sense of warmth enveloped me. The atmosphere was cozy, illuminated by gentle light, accompanied by the soothing murmur of conversations held in hushed tones. And then, I laid eyes on him. Mark. He sat at a table by the window, a cup of coffee resting in front of him. He was absorbed in his phone, scrolling through the screen, oblivious to my entrance. For a brief instant I found myself rooted to the spot, for the reason that he appeared unchanged. And he did not. His hair had been trimmed slightly, now adorned with strands of gray at the temples. Fine lines danced around his eyes, the sort that come from a lifetime of smiles, or perhaps from the richness of experience. Yet, when he finally raised his gaze and caught sight of me, that gradual, well-known smile unfurled across his lips. It was indeed him, the very man who once ignited a spark within me, a sensation I believed had long since faded away. Anna, he murmured gently as he rose to his feet. Hello, I murmured. In that fleeting moment, It seemed as though the decade that had passed had simply dissolved into thin air. We embraced. A brief, courteous embrace. Yet, even that fleeting contact ignited a surge of an indescribable sensation within me. We took our seats. I placed an order for coffee. In those initial moments it felt effortless, secure. Our conversation revolved around impartial subjects. The urban landscape, labor, my child, the endeavors he undertakes. It was reminiscent of reconnecting with a long-lost companion. Nearly there. Yet, beneath the surface, a subtle tension lingered. An unspoken tension lingered between us, a presence neither of us dared to acknowledge. Because we both understood this was more than merely an old acquaintance. At a certain moment he reclined, observing me intently. "You remain quite the same," he remarked. I chuckled. Gently. "That is simply not the case. I have transformed in every conceivable manner." Yet his eyes remained fixed on me, inviting and unwavering. "No," he replied softly. "You remain unchanged. Your head tilts ever so slightly. A subtle gesture that reveals your curiosity. The subtle movement of your gaze when you're concealing a thought. Every detail is etched in my mind." His words took me by surprise, for it had been an eternity since anyone paid attention to the subtle details. It has been ages since I felt truly acknowledged. I took a slow sip of my coffee, masking the tremor in my hands. "Mark," I whispered. "What prompted you to reach out to me?" He paused, enveloped in silence for a moment. Then he smiled, though it was a smile tinged with sorrow. "Due to my solitude. And because I found myself endlessly pondering whether you ever thought of me as well." My chest constricted. "I did," I murmured softly. A moment of silence lingered in the air. Uncomfortable moments are absent. Simply weighty. At that moment our conversation turned to the past. Reflecting on the year we shared together. The instances that seemed taken, exquisite, improper, yet in a way just as they should be. And I noticed a glimmer in his gaze. More than mere yearning. Yet the ache persists. The identical ache I experienced. Though we have brought it to a close, our concern has always lingered beneath the surface. 2 hours slipped away as if they were mere minutes. As the last sip of coffee vanished and silence enveloped our words, we remained still, neither of us daring to break the stillness. For neither of us wished for it to conclude. As we prepared to part ways, he accompanied me to my vehicle. The heavens had donned a cloak of gray, with a gentle drizzle cascading down. We lingered in the gentle drizzle, our gazes locked in a silent exchange. In that stillness, every sound resonated more profoundly. He extended his hand, softly sweeping a raindrop away from my hair. That delicate caress left me momentarily breathless. "We ought not to," I murmured. "I understand," he murmured gently. Yet, neither of us retreated. He refrained from kissing me. Not at that moment. Yet his hand rested on mine for a moment that stretched just a heartbeat too long. Just enough to ignite that familiar thrill in my heart once more. "I shall see you at the wedding," he declared at last. I inclined my head in agreement. And we were both aware. The conclusion was far from sight. The journey home unfolded in quietude. My grip tightens around the wheel. My thoughts are in a whirl. In a single afternoon, all that I had concealed for a decade surged forth, overwhelming me. Yet I found myself powerless to halt it. That evening, as I lay in bed beside Peter, I shut my eyes. All I could sense was the intensity of Mark's gaze upon me, the sensation of being recalled, the sensation of significance returning once more. I was acutely aware of the peril that lay ahead. I was aware of its wrongness. Yet I was aware. This would not be the final moment I would encounter him. On a dreary Friday night, the rain fell steadily. Peter embarked on a 3-day business journey. My son spent the weekend at a friend's house. The dwelling stood silent and devoid of life, insufficiently filled. I filled a glass with wine and settled onto the couch, gazing into the stillness around me. It's amusing. One can navigate through the hours enveloped in a cacophony, messages, tasks and dialogues that hold little significance. Yet, in the stillness of the night, when it's only you and the quiet, that's when the solitude seeps in. I reached for my phone. I ought not to have. I gazed at Mark's name illuminated on my screen. I promised myself I wouldn't make contact. Encountering him at the cafe was more than sufficient. If only I could bring this to a halt now. Yet I pressed on. I composed a trio of words. "Are you up?" His response came in a flash. "Indeed. Are you all right?" My fingers lingered just above the screen. I might have claimed that I was okay. I might have conjured up a reason. I could have brought it to a close right then and there. Yet I refrained. "No," I wrote. "I am not." Just 5 minutes later, my phone vibrated once more. "I shall be arriving shortly." I ought to have declined. Yet I refrained. As the knock echoed through the silence, my heart raced with a thunderous intensity that seemed to drown out everything else. I unsealed it, and there he stood, amidst the downpour, with hair clinging to his forehead, his gaze locked onto mine, as if he sought a response before crossing the threshold. I remained silent. I merely took a step back. He stepped inside. We lounged on the couch. For a time, silence enveloped our conversations. We lingered in that moment, the rain gently drumming on the glass, the quietude enveloping us, more profound than any conversation could convey. At last he spoke softly. "Anna, I can go if that's what you wish." My gaze fell upon him. In his gaze I recognized the very emotion that stirred within me: loneliness. A deep yearning fills the air, a longing we both endeavored to conceal for a decade. "Please don't," I murmured. And that was all there was to it. The final strand of self-control snapped. He extended his hand towards mine. As soon as his fingers brushed against mine, a shiver coursed through my entire being. Due to its overwhelming sense of familiarity, it's all too simple to slip back into. His kiss was anything but hesitant. It lacked courtesy. It was profound, brimming with all that we had kept inside. The passage of years, the evenings lost in contemplation, the assurance we believed would shield us from harm. In that instant, everything was consumed by flames. We took our time. It was neither chaotic nor hurried. The pace was languid, soft, as if two souls were reminiscing about a treasure they believed had slipped through their fingers for all time. A surge of vitality coursed through me. After a long time, I finally felt like myself once more. Not the spouse, not the mother, not the woman who conceals her solitude with fleeting smiles. Only Anna, the lady he once cherished, the woman he continued to cherish. In the stillness that followed, we remained there, enveloped in silence. The air was imbued with a subtle scent of rain, mingling with the residual warmth of our presence. He embraced me tightly, his fingers gliding through my hair just like they once did. I shut my eyes and allowed myself to absorb his essence. For a fleeting instant, I allowed myself to escape the reality beyond those four walls. Yet, in that moment, I beheld it, my wedding band. It remains upon my finger, glistening softly in the muted glow, and guilt crashed over me like a relentless tide. "I regret calling you," I murmured. Mark's grip on me grew firmer. "Please don't," he murmured gently. "Do not look back on this with regret. Not this evening. However, I have already taken care of that." And I did not. Simultaneously. "I have a family," I uttered, my voice quivering with emotion. "I am unable to." He pressed his lips softly against my forehead. "I understand," he whispered. "I was aware of the wrongness of this long before I arrived. But Anna, I just couldn't resist. And I came to the understanding that I was unable to do so as well." I slipped into my clothes without a sound. He escorted me to the threshold. Just before I departed, he cradled my face in his hands, gazing at me as if I were the sole focus of his universe. "I've been thinking about you," he murmured softly. "I missed you as well," I murmured, my voice barely rising above a whisper. As I ventured outside, the rain enveloped me. Upon returning to my vacant home, I rested against the door, shutting my eyes in contemplation. The reverberation of recent events lingered in the stillness. And I was aware. This was not the final occurrence. As dawn broke, Peter picked up the phone and called. His voice carried a comforting, laid-back quality. "Hello, how are things going? Did you rest peacefully?" "Indeed," I deceived. As I ended the call, the burden of the two realms I now inhabited settled heavily upon me. I believed it would merely be a fleeting evening, a fleeting lapse in strength. Yet, solitude lingers far beyond a single evening. It persists in returning. And thus he did as well. The dawn that followed that night seemed surreal. The gentle patter of rain continued to serenade me as I stirred awake, its soft rhythm dancing against the windows. I brewed a cup of coffee. I glanced at my phone. I navigated the routine of a typical day. Yet within I had transformed. For now there existed him. Once more. Peter returned home from his journey that afternoon. He entered, pressed his lips to my cheek, and smiled as if everything remained the same. And to him, it was as if nothing had ever mattered. Yet for me everything had changed. That evening we gathered around the table to share a meal as a family. Our son shared a humorous tale from school, and Peter chuckled heartily. A smile graced my lips. I fulfilled my part. Yet, as I lingered at that table, my thoughts wandered far away. Once again enveloped in Mark's embrace. In that hushed, elusive embrace of warmth once more. And I loathed myself for it. I assured myself that it would come to an end. It was imperative that it come to an end. It was an error in judgment. A fleeting lapse of strength. Yet, solitude often speaks with a voice that drowns out logic. A few days later I received a text from Mark. "Is everything all right?" The message held my gaze for what felt like an eternity. I might have chosen to overlook it. Yet I refrained. "No," I responded with a quick tap on the keys. "You occupy my thoughts endlessly." And in an instant it started anew. We gathered over coffee. Next we shall indulge in lunch. On yet another late night, with Peter absent, it evolved into a cadence. An alluring, perilous cadence from which I found myself unable to escape. Every moment spent in your presence felt like a breath of fresh air after an eternity of stillness. He paid attention. He caught sight of me. He recalled the little details I hadn't even noticed I had overlooked about my own self. Yet with each return home, the weight of guilt became increasingly burdensome. I would gaze at Peter, pondering whether he could perceive the truth. If he noticed the way my gaze darted off when he inquired about my day. If he perceived the moment of uncertainty that washed over me as he extended his hand toward mine. Yet he chose not to. Perhaps he simply lacked the desire to do so. One evening, following a delightful afternoon with Mark, Peter leaned in and kissed me in the kitchen. Possessed a gentle quality. Recognizable. Yet it failed to quicken my pulse. In that instant it struck me just how distant I had wandered. Mark began to crave something greater. Though he never voiced it outright, I sensed it in the way he hesitated as I prepared to depart. As his voice softened, he inquired, "Do you ever ponder what it might be like if we didn't have to conceal ourselves?" I found myself at a loss for words. I had contemplated it. Yet, the thought of truly departing felt unfathomable. One evening, after we had shared a moment, he cradled my face in his hands and softly murmured, "Anna, my heart belongs to you. I have always persisted. I can no longer maintain the facade that I'm content with merely fragments of you." His words pierced through me, leaving my heart in anguish. "I cannot offer you anything further," I murmured in response. "I possess a family, a child born of one's own flesh and blood. I cannot bring ruin to it all." His gaze grew tender, yet a trace of pain lingered beneath the surface. "Am I merely a means for you to flee?" he inquired softly. "No," I uttered, my voice trembling. "You're not a means of escape. You are the piece of me that has slipped away." Following that night, a change occurred in our dynamic. The words began to linger. The pauses stretched out, lingering in the air. Yet, despite everything, we found ourselves unable to resist. It seemed as though I was navigating the existence of two distinct selves. In one, I embodied the role of the wife, the mother, the steadfast woman who ensured everything remained balanced. In the other I existed, yearned for, desired in a manner I hadn't experienced in ages. I found myself questioning which version of me was truly authentic. Peter began to observe. One evening, he gazed at me from across the dinner table and murmured gently, "You've seemed changed recently. Remote. Is there an issue?" My throat constricted. I conjured a smile. "No, I find myself weary." He inclined his head, acknowledging the response. Yet, in some inexplicable way, that pain cut even deeper. Due to his lack of insistence, he failed to perceive me in the manner that Mark did. I found myself contemplating whether I was beginning to fall in love with Mark once more. Or perhaps it was simply the way he made me feel that captivated me. Youthful. Complimentary. Acknowledged. The distinction had become lost on me. On a stormy evening, I found myself drawn to him once more. We lingered in quietude for what felt like an eternity, simply embracing one another. At last he murmured, "I have no desire to cause you pain. I also wish to avoid pain. Yet this, whatever it is we're engaged in, it's shattering me." My eyes brimmed with tears. "Perhaps it would be best to halt," I murmured, my voice quivering. Yet neither of us made a single move, for we were both aware that it was beyond our reach. Not at this moment. As the first light of dawn broke, I made my way home, the quiet of the morning enveloping me. The streets lay deserted. I found myself pondering the duration of this precarious situation before it inevitably crumbled into chaos. I found myself suspended in the delicate balance of two realms, the one that belonged to me, and the one I desired yet could not possess. With each passing day, the distance that once separated them diminished, until I became aware something must give way. On a leisurely Sunday afternoon, a day that exudes a sense of tranquility, Peter found himself in the yard, tinkering with an object that hardly warranted any repairs. My son was upstairs, immersed in his own realm, surrounded by melodies and assignments. There I stood in the kitchen, my gaze fixed on the screen of my phone. That morning, I received a message from Mark. "It's time for a conversation." For the final time, I understood its significance. A sensation stirred within me, deep in my chest, even before I uttered a word in response. We reunited at the very cafe where our story first unfolded once more. Upon my arrival, he was already present. Yet on this occasion, his smile lacked the softness and warmth it once held. It was weary. "Hello," I murmured softly. "Hello," he responded. We took our seats. For an extended stretch of time, silence enveloped us. At last he shattered the stillness. "I'm departing," he murmured gently. My eyes fluttered, taken by surprise. "Are you departing?" "Indeed. I accepted a position in a different city. It serves my interests more effectively. A new beginning." My throat constricted. "When can we expect it?" "The week that follows." I gazed into my coffee, my fingers quivering ever so slightly around the cup. This was the moment. The conclusion we both anticipated was inevitable. "I can't go on like this," he pressed on. "I can't continue to witness you like this, aware that you'll forever return to him, understanding that I will forever remain the hidden truth." His voice faltered just a touch at the conclusion. I took a deep breath. "I never intended to cause you pain," I murmured. "I understand," he replied softly. "Yet you did. Caused you pain as well. We are both wounded, Anna. And we are the ones wielding the blade." I felt compelled to urge him to remain. I longed to request just one more day, one more night, one more fleeting moment to truly feel alive once more. Yet I found myself unable to do so, because I understood he was correct. Hot tears welled up in my eyes. "Mark, I love you," I whispered softly. "I love you too," he responded, his words flowing effortlessly. He let out a deep sigh. Yet there are moments when love alone cannot suffice. Not when the moment is misaligned. Not when the price is excessively steep. A profound stillness enveloped the room, a weight that transcends mere language. At last, he extended his arm across the table and grasped my hand in his. His touch radiated warmth, a steady presence, just as it had always been. "I will carry your memory with me," he murmured gently. "Each aspect of your being. Your laughter resonates deeply. Your gaze lingers on me, heavy with unspoken thoughts. Silent droplets trace paths down my face. And I shall carry your memory with me," I murmured. "You brought me back to who I truly am." We lingered in that moment for a few more minutes. Two souls destined to remain apart, yet forever haunted by the memories of one another. As we finally rose to our feet, he escorted me to my vehicle. The sky was gentle and muted, reminiscent of the day our paths crossed once more. Just as I was about to open the door, he glanced back at me. "This doesn't mean I didn't want you," he murmured softly. I understand, I responded. And this doesn't imply that my concern will wane, he added. I understand, I murmured once more. He leaned in closer and pressed his lips against mine. This kiss was unlike any we had shared before. Devoid of yearning, devoid of desperation, merely gentle, concluding, as if locking away a treasure in a chest, destined to remain untouched forever. As he withdrew, he paused to press his forehead gently against mine for a fleeting moment. We vowed we'd never cross paths again, he whispered. And then we shattered that vow. I confessed, my voice quivering. He offered a wistful smile. Isolation compels you to actions you once believed were beyond your reach. And then, he withdrew a pace and departed. He forged ahead, never glancing over his shoulder. I remained silent. Some farewells carry a weight that words cannot bear. After that, I lingered in my car for what felt like an eternity. Gazing out at the street, I sensed the heaviness of closure enveloping me. As I made my way home, an enveloping silence greeted me at the door. Peter sat in the living room, engrossed in his book. His gaze lifted as I entered the room. "Hello," he murmured gently. "Is everything all right?" "Indeed," I deceived, and offered a smile. Life continued its relentless march forward after that. The identical patterns. The identical serene dawns. The very gatherings where my quietness went unnoticed by all. Yet within, a fragment of my essence felt absent. A fragment I entrusted to Mark. In the quiet hours of the night, he often crosses my mind. The memory of his gaze lingers in my mind. I recall how he made me feel seen, as if I truly existed in the world. I reflect on how, for a fleeting instant, I allowed myself to embrace the woman I used to be. I vowed to myself that our paths would never cross again. For a decade, I held steadfast to that vow, until solitude shattered it. I have made a new promise. One I softly murmur to myself in the stillness. I refuse to allow myself to experience that kind of love once more. Yet, beneath the surface, I am aware. Certain affections endure through time. They exist silently within you, akin to an indelible shadow.